Welcome on back to another episode of Listening to the Voices in Our Heads with me, Jenna O'Malley, your soul writer. Today we have someone who actually has a lot of crafty ideas in mind for us. She's going to talk to us about it in context of poetry, but I'm a fan of Tolkien. I'm going to admit that makes it into my prose sometimes too. Let's go ahead and hang out with my friend Gabby. Welcome on in, Gabby. How are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your books, and what you do.
All right, so my name is Gabby Gilliam, and I write a little bit of everything. But what I'm going to be talking about mostly today is my chapbook that came out in June. It's called No Ocean, Spit Me Out, and it was released from Old Scratch Press. It's a collection of around 30 poems that explore themes of family and faith and accepting who you are in regards to both of those things. And so it is available both in paperback and ebook, and you can get it from Amazon, but also Barnes and Noble.
Love it, love it. So what are some of the common creative blocks that you faced along the way of producing this chapbook or maybe others?
So one of the things that's always hard for me when I'm putting things together in a collection is to try and figure out what I'm going to include and how they work together. So trying to figure out what things my poems all share in common. And so, like I said, these ones, it's kind of three major things. Um, it's so trying to get them to all fit together is always a little bit of a challenge for me. But also sometimes, you sit down and just nothing comes. So, I also struggle a little bit sometimes with getting the words on the page, and then once they're there, trying to decide what to do with them.
Definitely, probably a common thing a lot of us have, regardless of whether you write poetry, prose, or screenplays for sure. So then prior to this, we talked a little bit through setting this up, and you were mentioning you use word magnets and generators. What are they? What kind do you use? Did my question come through, my friend? Oh, magnets and generators, and which ones do you use?
So, word magnets are exactly what they sound like. They are words printed on a magnet. I think they originally started out as like fridge poetry. Um, and I had a friend who loves them. And so she has all of these different themed word magnet sets, and she used to post them as prompts. And they would be things like scientific terms or something like she has ones that are just related to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So there's random words from the Buffyverse in there. And she would mix them all up and she would be like, use as many as you want and make a poem out of it. And so I loved that challenge. And I would try and use all of them if I could. The scientific and mathematical ones turned out to be my favorite. I always ended up with something really unexpected with those. And I've had more than a handful of my word magnet poems go on to be published just because they make me look at language in a very unique way. Because you're trying to make all of these weird words go together and it ends up creating something really fun. And so those are actual tangible magnets. The random word generator is, I mean, you can just Google random word generator and you'll get some that pop up. And it's essentially the same thing, except for you can control how many words it gives you. I'll usually pick either 10 or 15 and I type that in there. And then I just run with whatever words it spits out at me. And so it is really random. And sometimes it'll be very challenging to get the words to go together. But sometimes you'll get some and like just immediately you're like, I know exactly what I'm going to do with these. And for those, the random word generator, I've actually used it with, I run a teen writing workshop at the library, and I've used it with them to kind of help give them inspiration and used it myself at our last meeting. I had given them like the theme of ghosts because it's Halloween and
Oh,
gave
yeah,
them,
they probably
10
love
or
that.
15 minutes, like, hey, go. Like, we took a little field trip. We went and got books about ghosts, and I gave one to each of them. They looked at it for 5 minutes, and then we wrote for 10 or 15 minutes, I can't remember. And then I used a random word generator for myself and then broke all of my rules because I got words like steak and bless and a couple other things. So I totally wrote a vampire story. And I was like, hey, I'll work some ghosts in at some point. I'll make it circle round to the theme that I was actually supposed to write about. But sometimes, like the words that they spit out at you, they go together in a way that you immediately can turn it into something. And that's kind of what happened with me and my vampire story. So I don't always use them for poetry. I've used them for other things as well. But most often I use them both for poems.
So you definitely are in the mode of using them not just to fight your common creative blocks, but for others. Are there certain generators you prefer over others when you are blocked? Like, do you have certain ones bookmarked?
Yeah. So like I said, like there is one, I think it's literally just called random word generator. Like I think if you Google it, that's what it is. It's probably my go-to for that. But if I'm home, I also will just shout to my son, give me 3 words, and
That's
I will take
amazing.
those 3 words and go. So sometimes he's a little bit of a jerk about it, and he'll be like, chicken nuggets, barbecue sauce, and something else. And so then I have to try and figure out how to make a poem out of that. But for the most part, he's a really good sport, and he'll give me, there'll be words that have nothing to do with each other, but I can at least work with them, and they're not always food related.
And that's good for him too, because it's like a thinking exercise on his part a little bit then too. So you're encouraging him to do the same by proxy. Former English teacher. I love this. I love this so much. So, what are some ways that word magnets and generators can help outside of the drafting stages? Say you're in revision or editing land to publish.
So if I'm working with themed ones, um, and there's a word that I didn't like, or like it's kind of close to working, but I'm not really feeling it, I could always shake it up and pull another couple of words and see if I find one that fits, or that I like better. And every once in a while, I'll do that with the random word generator online also. If it's just like a bank of words where I'm like, this is not gonna work out. Every once in a while, I'll random again, um, and get it to spit something out. Um, I've also done it when I reach a point where I don't feel like the poem or the story is finished, but I'm not sure where I want it to go. I'll do another generator and be like, okay, new scene or, new verse, and we're gonna start working some of this in. So it can kind of help give me a direction, even if I'm lost after having started.
Do you ever switch out into like a thesaurus if you're like, I want this, just like a synonym?
Every once in a while. And I don't actually own a physical thesaurus anymore, so I do an
Thesaurus.com
online
for
one
the
of those
win.
also.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thesaurus.com for the win. So, what are the benefits to using word magnets in your marketing even? Have you done that before?
So I haven't, but I could see the possibility of it, especially like with how wonderful Canva is in regard to making like flyers and things. I could totally see using like the idea of magnets and piecing them together almost collage style to make some flyers. I have done like a workshop. I was at a book festival last month, and I did do a workshop on finding inspiration in unexpected places. And so we did talk about word magnets and word generators for that. It was a generative workshop. I made everybody write a poem based on a list of words from the random word generator. So I do use it a little bit in workshops and things like that also.
I have some listeners in the channel who do flash fiction, so they're going, "Oh yeah, I'm into this so much," because they're writing, 150, maybe 200 word micro fictions sometimes, and this would definitely be right up their alley too. So thank you for sharing that. Is there a virtual version of your workshop by chance, or a place people could see that online?
Not yet. So I am. Did I leave?
For a second. For a second. We were at workshops. You said yet. They're not yet.
Not yet. It is something that I would love to be able to offer in the future. I just started offering them in person at places. So, like, I just started like the book festival, and then I have one this month at my local library. And so I haven't really figured out how to do it in a virtual space yet, but it's something I'd love to do.
We should have a conversation. I have an idea for you that might work.
I am
So,
open to that.
what are then some of your favorite ways to engage with other writers? You like workshops. Do you do more than just the workshops though? Like when you go to these conventions or the library, do you work at the library? Do you meet and greet with others?
I love to meet other authors, and so I usually do try to talk to my table mates. Sometimes, most of the time, actually, I end up walking away with books, and I end up buying their books and reading their books also. I do belong to some poetry groups run through the library and then also some online ones. I belong to this amazing book group on Facebook that is for ekphrastic poetry. So somebody posts some art for us every week, and then we write poems inspired by that art. And I've had some wonderful poems come out of that group. Um, and I've had some published. I can't remember if any of them are in my chapbook or not. But that has been lovely. We give each other feedback. We let each other know of like workshops and other things that are coming up. So we've done like online workshops with the ekphrastic review, but then also poets and writers and other places that are offering online things. So that's been a really good group. So I do try to network when I can. Um, Sometimes it's hard. We are very, isolated, introverted people, us writers. And so it's hard sometimes to get us to want to do things. But I've been trying to do more online groups and open mics and things like that when I can.
Definitely look around the authortube spaces because a couple of my fellow author tubers on YouTube do host open mic nights and do poetry. I believe JC Carpenter has some things that she's involved in, and also the writing sisters, Lauren and Nicole, tend to do some poetry things. So you are in a great space, and shout outs to those channels. If you don't follow them, you should, just saying. So, when it comes to engaging with your readers or even listeners, since you do open mic nights, which I have questions about that now to add on, how do you engage with your readers? Like, do you have a certain type of swag you like to do, certain events?
So one of the events that I've done most often is Strong Women, Strange Worlds. So if they do quick reads, they do them twice a month usually, and they have 6 authors, and we each get 8 minutes to read. And it's all speculative bent. So it's been like horror, sci-fi, or fantasy. I've done both speculative poetry and uh, horror. So I have like some horror novellas that are out. But that community has been great. They always have giveaways. And so I will give away copies of my books. I've done e-copies of my books. Um, I don't do that many giveaways on what I was doing.
That's fair. So, what are your favorite ways to engage with your readers?
So one of my favorite things one of my favorite readings I've done is with Strong Women, Strange Worlds. They do readings twice a month. They are a speculative bent. So, horror, sci-fi, fantasy. And I have some speculative poetry. And so I've done a speculative poetry reading with them. But then I also wrote some horror novellas. So I did some readings from them. They always offer giveaways for the people who come to their readings. And they're just like a great community. So they're one of my favorite ones. And I love doing the giveaways with them. I'd like to do more giveaways on my own, but haven't figured out a good way to do that on my social media yet. But I do post almost daily on Threads. Um, I follow somebody who gives haiku prompts there, and so I write a haiku almost every day. Um, but there are some other really good writing prompt givers there, and so I post some stuff there and love to respond to comments that I get there. And same thing with Facebook. Um, and then I do try to promote events, but my favorite thing is to see them face to face at book festivals, or I do comic conventions. So I love to talk to people there. I do some events at the library. So I do try and get around, but I feel like I like the in-person better than the virtual space because it's just so much more fun to talk to people face to face.
Definitely agreed. Definitely agreed. So, you mentioned open mic nights. How does someone even prepare for one of those?
Um, that's a good question. So, sometimes it'll be whatever I've written most recently. If it's an open mic where um, I know that I can get some feedback from people. Not all open mics are like that. Like a lot of them, you just read and it's kind of just like you're getting your voice out there, but you're not getting anything back. But some of them, the chat will light up with comments from people, and that can be really helpful, especially if there are some lines where you're not sure if it's working. You can kind of get a feel for how people are responding to them. Um, but there are other times where I'll come in knowing, I love this poem and I just feel like reading this poem or sharing this poem today. Um, if it's like an open mic that's recorded and posted on YouTube, a lot of times I'll try to read something that's already been published. So I don't have that weird gray area of whether it's technically been published now that it's been read and posted online. Um, and so there are a lot of times where if I know that a video is going to appear somewhere later, I'll just choose something that's already been published so that I don't have to worry with any of that headache.
Very wise choice. Very, very wise choice. So, you mentioned a couple of in person, it sounds like, events and even some online. Where do you find your events, or how do you find your events? I guess I should ask.
A lot of that is author networking. I'll see another author talking about it, or there'll be a series that they talk up. Like Stone Soup is a Facebook series that does poetry readings, and they'll have a featured poet that reads for, 15, 20 minutes, and then there's an open mic after. And I'll have poet friends who appear on it or recommend things like that. And so then I'll reach out to those same people and say, "Hey, I heard that you do this. I'd love to be, your featured reader one time." The library is a good place. Our library here, especially, is very supportive of writers and poets, and so they have poetry groups, writing groups, and then they do some events, but they also will promote local events that are happening nearby. So if there's, an open mic night somewhere in the county, a lot of times they'll send something out to us. Um, but I would say, honestly, word of mouth from other authors is where I hear about them the most.
And make it known that you're looking for, I guess, would be part of that conversation for sure then too. Good points all
Mhm.
around. So, if someone wants to plan something at a library workshop or any kind of event, where would you say they would start? Maybe is it calling the front desk, or are some libraries different on that?
Most of the libraries that I have seen, it goes through like the reference desk, their programming does. I know my local library has an online form that you can fill out if you're interested in running a workshop, and you give them the workshop details and when you would be interested in hosting it. And if there's like room in their calendar, they'll reach out to you and they'll offer you some dates and say, "Hey, does this work?" Um, and so I'm sure other libraries have something similar. So that's a way that you can do it without even having to talk to anybody if you are uncomfortable getting on the phone. You can check library websites and see if they have like a Google form or something where you can fill out that shows interest in hosting an event there.
Heads up, everybody in anywhere that has a free library, get searching. For sure, for
Mhm.
sure. So, what are your plans for the rest of 2024 into 2025 and beyond then, my friend?
So I am the poetry editor for an online literary magazine called Instant Noodles. We have a call that is out right now for our holiday issue. It's always like a humor issue with that's holiday themed. This year, because we're Instant Noodles, our theme is holiday nudes, NOODS.
Oh,
So
nice.
that closes, I wanna say the 15th, of this month, but we'll have another we almost always have rolling submissions, so almost immediately, our submission window for our next issue will come out. Um, I don't know if we have a theme for that one yet. Um, in addition to that, the same press does, like a Halloween anthology. Not I don't wanna say every year, but somewhat frequently, and so I'm gonna be editing that for them this year, and so calls are open for that right now if you have any spooky stories. Um, and again, that's through, Current Words Publishing. You can find it on Duotrope. Um, so that's coming up. So I'll be reading for both of those things. Um, I do have a workshop at the library next month, but that's October. And then um, I do some comic conventions, so I have those coming up. And then where I live in Maryland, there is a big book festival in the spring. It's called the Gaithersburg Book Festival.
I
And
was
so I usually have
wondering. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I usually have a table there. I usually pitch workshops, but I don't always get chosen for that, so I don't know if I'll be leading a workshop there, but I will
That's a
try to
tough
lead a
one to get
workshop
tables
there.
for. Wow.
Yeah. So, I'm aiming for that. Sometimes I do AwesomeCon in DC. I haven't signed
Nice.
up for
That's a
that
good
yet.
choice.
They're not Yeah, it's an amazing show, and it's a great venue. So, I will try to do that, but sometimes their weekends always change. So, like, sometimes they're early in the spring, sometimes they're not till June. So,
Correct.
I have to kinda see how that's gonna fit into my schedule first. Um, But then I also try to do there's another local festival here, the Kensington Day of the Book, and I do try to do that one as well.
I haven't done some of these in a couple of years. I used to do them as a fan, or way even back, some of them that are, a decade older or more. I did as a college student or as field trips for my students myself. So, as a Marylander, hello, fellow Marylander, I'm in Washington County. Where are you at?
I'm in Montgomery County.
Ah, so you are right in the heart of where a lot of writing stuff in Maryland lives, for sure. Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
Definitely.
And very
Would
close
you
to DC, very DC adjacent, so it makes DC events very easy for me as well.
It's probably closer to you than driving up to Baltimore, isn't it? Sometimes, depending on what it is.
Yes, traffic DC traffic can make it be the same, but Baltimore's pretty approachable for me also, it's less than an hour from me.
That's not bad. That's not bad. I grew up on Inner Harbor, so definitely. It depends on where you're headed. Love it. Do you think living in the Maryland area has affected your writing in any way?
I'm sure it has. It has definitely made it so that lots of things are accessible to me. Richmond in Virginia has a lot of things that goes on, and that's not really that far from here. The festival I just went to was in Frostburg, which was 2 hours
That's where
away,
I went to
not like, you
college.
know so I was out there in the mountains. It was lovely.
Did
Um,
you do the
so like it's
literary
just
book festival they do out there at Frostburg State?
I did the Indie Lit Fest, yeah.
Oh,
That's where I did my
I love
workshop.
that so much. Oh my goodness. I wish I had known because I canceled going to that as an alumni. Oh my goodness.
Aw. Well, I'm hoping to
Oh,
do it again next year, so, hit me up if you're there.
it's a small world, y'all.
It is.
Oh, thank you so much for joining me. Did you have any other questions or comments to add, my friend, as we wrap up and wind down?
Right? Just that, it's a small world, um, but also there's a lot I'm grateful that I'm close to so many things, and like I said, I really think that that has helped my writing journey, like, there's just so much that's accessible to me here in this area. Um, but also thank you for the authortube recommendations. I took some notes, gonna be checking into those later. I really appreciate that. And like I'm always excited to expand my my little writer circle. So I'm looking forward to that.
We're glad to bring you in, and maybe because there's a lot of us in AuthorTube, I see you friends who are Marylanders, and I'm like,
Hmm,
she's about to make a bunch of new friends.
I'm excited
When we
about that.
do our I'm planning a get together, and I've been talking about doing this for a while. We need to do AuthorTubers a Maryland meetup for sure because there's so many of us. Oh,
I'd be down with it.
sure. I was gonna say, bring your friends, right? So thank you for
Mhm.
being here today. Remind us where we can find you, your stuff, your books, and more, my friend, as we wrap up and wind down.
Sure. My website and Facebook are both pretty easy to find. My website is gabbygilliam.com and my Facebook is Gabby Gilliam Author. Kept it nice and simple. Like I said, my chapbook is available on both Amazon and Barnes and Noble, so you can do those. It's also available from my public library here and soon to be the Frederick Public Library because they got a copy at Indie Lit Fest. So it
Nice.
is in some local libraries and bookstores here also.
Well, definitely check out all she has going on. And if you're in the Maryland area, check out her workshops because I know I'm gonna, and maybe I'll see you all at one in the future. Thank you all for being here. Check the description box, and above all, take care of yourselves. You've been worth it from the beginning.